So the other day I was watching Back to the Future for their 35th anniversary. I hope I'm not wrong. And there's this dance at the end. Wait. The Enchantment Under the Sea dance. I'm a fan. All that to say, I was looking at the dresses and I just love the style of the 50s for dresses. So I decided to make a 50s ball gown, but that's not what you're gonna see today because the first step to that is to make a petticoat. So this is the first video of a two-part series, and if you want to see me make the actual 50s dress, then just subscribe to know when the second one comes out. For this project, I got 10 meters of tulle, and I wanted to show it to you in a fun way, but I just ended up getting stuck in it and gave up. I was going through my sewing box, where I just hoard a lot of things, and I was looking for fabric to make the lining. So I found this. Wait, I don't know if you can see it. Okay, yeah. I found this thing. If I cut it up and make a new, shorter lining with it, I think it could work. So I found that. I found more tulle. I've tried working with tulle before and it was such a mess that I never wanted to touch it again, but I guess I just wasn't doing it right, and now I know a little bit more how to work with it, so I'm guessing that I can use a bit of it. Lastly, that's some ribbon that I bought like a couple months ago for a corset I made, and I'm guessing I can use it to maybe hem something, you know, just put it at the end, cover something up. I don't know. Maybe I should take this thing off. I cut up my weird skirt to make the lining for my petticoat. I kept the elastic because I figured I could use it for the waistband. I cut 2 panels about 40 centimeters long and made them way too large, so don't follow that. I was planning to gather it, but I later realized that it was going to make my waist look too poofy for the 50s style, so I did fix it, but after I did all the work. Since one of the panels was already hemmed, I sewed a rolled hem on the other one and then sewed them together along the sides, wrong sides together. Yes, you heard right, wrong sides. Today, I'm mixing things up with what I like to think is called a French seam. It's really just a clean way of finishing up your seams on the inside. So first, you sew a seam with the wrong sides together, then you flip your project on the other side so your fabric is right sides together. I like to iron everything as I go just so the seams look a lot cleaner. And then you sew another seam right next to where the seam allowance ends on the inside, trapping the raw edges in a little casing. If that wasn't clear enough, I'll make sure to put the link to a nice tutorial in the description. After all that hard work, I finally realized that my skirt was too big. With a heavy heart, I destroyed all my work and made it a lot smaller, but still wide enough to be able to slide it on with an elastic waistband. So I did the French seam thing again, but unlike me, you probably won't have to do that. Once that's done, you can set it aside and move on to the actual petticoat. I drew a general plan of how I wanted it to be constructed, but I didn't actually stick with those numbers, so instead pause the video and look at this. I used my old piece of tulle to cut out the first section pieces. I really don't think I was using the best method, but it ended up working out. I cut out the third section pieces because I apparently don't like doing things in the right order. Since I'd bought 10 meters of tulle exactly, I didn't need to measure anything because it was already the length I wanted. I don't know how people usually work with this, like how they fold it, how they cut it, but I think I'm going a little insane. If I'm being completely honest, earlier it was my sister who was helping me fold my tulle, and now she went back to watching K-dramas. I'm stuck doing all of this by myself, and I'm going a little bit crazy. Wow, I really zoned out. Okay. After my subtle mental breakdown, I got back on my feet and created a very messy system to fold my tulle. I stuck my measuring tape under a roll of duct tape and my coffee mug, making sure it was showing me exactly 1 meter. Then I folded the tulle by meters, following the measuring tape. Listen, I don't know how actual sewing people do it, but I'm pretty sure it's not like this. It ended up working surprisingly well, and I cut 1 long strip for the middle section. I used the same system to find the middle of that strip and cut it in half to get my 2 5-meter strips. Ugh. I dropped something in there. Oh, it's a piece of fluff. I guess I won't be drinking this anymore. Next, I started hand gathering every strip of tulle. It takes a really long time and you totally don't have to do it like that. There are other methods and I will link a video that explains another way of doing it down below, but for me, I found that it was better to do it like this. In total, I ended up gathering 34 meters of tulle. I went to bed pretty late that night. So it is the next day, and honestly, it's kind of late because I spent so much time on those gathers yesterday. In all honesty, I went to bed at 4 a.m. So what I did is, oh my god, this doesn't look like anything, but it is something. That's, I think, 10 meters, and those little noises are at the ends. I tied clips and trombones. Trombones? No, that's in French. In French, we say un trombone. Paper clips. So I tied little clips at the ends of the threads just so it wouldn't go back in. I know this is such a mess. So I've got 2 5-meter strands, 2 10-meter strands, and right there I have my top section. So I'm gonna put those together now. I started with the 2 biggest sections to get it out of the way first. I evened out the gathers on the bottom strip for it to fit properly on the 5-meter strip. I marked the middle for both and started from there. At some point, I realized that the thread wasn't long enough, so I had to add more thread by making the smallest knot possible so it would still go through the tulle. If you ever try to make this, just make sure that your thread is as long as the strip above it. I sewed the 2 sections together, setting my stitch length between 1 and 2. For tulle, you just need very small stitches so they can grab everything. I did the same thing to attach it to the top section. Then I sewed the 2 sides together, closing the petticoat. I repeated those steps for the second layer, but that took one whole eternity, so I didn't film it. Now time to get back to that lining. I pinned the first petticoat layer to it, making sure the gathers were spread out properly, sewed it in place, and did the same with the second layer. Next, I got started on the waistband. My fabric wasn't long enough to just cut it in one piece, so I cut 2 strips, each 10 centimeters wide and 65 centimeters long, and I just sewed the ends together. I ironed it and pressed open that seam, and then I created sort of a bias tape. First, I folded it in half, and then I folded the edges towards the inside, ironing everything so it would stay in place. I pinned the waistband to the skirt, hiding those raw edges, and sewed it in place, leaving a small opening to put in my elastic. I apparently didn't make the waistband wide enough because the elastic just wouldn't fit, so I sewed a second stitch in the middle of the waistband, again leaving an opening to put in 2 strands of smaller elastic. I threaded those through with a safety pin and violently poked my finger as it opened when it was still inside, and tied the ends of the elastic together before closing off the openings with a top stitch. Then, because I didn't think I had already worked hard enough, I decided to use that ribbon. I need to burn the edge of the ribbon to keep it from fraying. I don't know if I'm gonna set the house on fire. This is hard. I think it worked. It worked really well, although I did almost burn my tulle in the process, and I used that ribbon to cover up the seams between each section. I just sewed a straight stitch right in the middle of the ribbon and burned the edges off as I went. Then I was oh, no, not yet. I thought the petticoat was a little too long, so I asked my sister to model for me again. I figured out how much I needed to cut by following the length of a dress that matched the style I was going for, and I trimmed both layers. Then I was done. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with me through that whole thing. So again, there is going to be a part 2, so stay tuned.
Ah, c'est chaud!
Ouais, mais tu fais juste à côté, genre, c'est même pas...